but mostly it's like watching what they're doing, right? When are they paying? Why are they paying? Um, and using that data to like inform the decisions we're making.
Yeah, you're right on. I think that behavioral data is just without peer. Hi, it's Rich Smith, and this is Revenue Science. Today's guest is Steve Chen, founder and CEO of Boldin. Steve is a repeat founder and longtime operator in the fintech and financial planning space. A few years ago, Steve and I spent a full day together just outside of San Francisco with a small group of CEOs debating one of the most important and misunderstood topics in business: the difference between strategic and tactical marketing. At that time, Steve was leading a company called New Retirement. Since then, that company has gone through a significant evolution, including a thoughtful and intentional rebrand to Boldin, a shift that reflects not just a new name, but a clearer strategic posture around how people actually make long-term financial decisions. Steve brings a rare combination of founder-level pattern recognition, boardroom credibility, and a deep appreciation for behavioral science. Today, we're going to unpack what that evolution taught him about strategy, leadership, decision-making, and growth, and what CEOs can learn when marketing stops being a collection of tactics and starts becoming a true business strategy. Hey, Steve, great to see you again, and welcome to the Revenue Science Podcast.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Rich. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, I thought to just get us started, if you could tell us, for those who don't know Boldin, give us the 60-second overview, who you serve, what kinds of problems you solve, where the company's focused today.
Sure. Yeah, the big societal problem we're trying to help address is that most people are not confident about their money, and they're not really sure how to manage it effectively, who to trust, and just make sure they have enough money to maintain their quality of life over their full life cycle. So we're attacking it through financial planning and literacy, and essentially you can think of it like TurboTax for financial planning, right? Anybody can build their own financial plan is the core innovation, and then it becomes like Google Docs because we want to enable different players in the ecosystem, like coaches and advisors and product providers, to collaborate with people, but in a very direct and transparent way. So we go to market two ways. One is direct to consumer. That's how we started. And, we've had 500,000 people build financial plans. There's about $300 billion of life savings that are being planned for on the platform right now. And then we also go to market in the enterprise and with partners. So we're really doing that to kind of amplify, the top of the funnel and get more folks in here. So, we work with, we do some work with the Motley Fool, who's also an investor from, big organizations like that. We do some work with Raytheon. We help provide financial wellness in the workplace with them. And we do some work with Nationwide as well, also in the workplace, helping to, provide kind of the participant experience in the workplace around, retirement savings accounts. But those are some of the ways that we go to market.
Yeah, that's great. And, it's an amazing service that you guys are offering and, touching a lot of lives and helping people. I think I might have mentioned to you, I recently was on a ski lift with a ski buddy, and he just brought up Boldin out of the blue. We were talking about retiring and finances, and he works for an investment company. So he's deep into the industry, but he's still using your platform and loves it. And, he's run like 10 different scenarios, for his own retirement. So, I think it's just fantastic what you guys are doing. You and I first met, we spent some time together just outside of San Francisco, and we were talking about strategic versus tactical marketing. At the time, your company was still called New Retirement. So what's fundamentally changed in the last couple years?
Yeah. Well, the company was called, the backstory of the retirement is that, well, the backstory of the company is this got started because I was trying to help my brother and I were trying to help my mom figure out her own situation, right? So she's aging, getting, kind of wrapping up her first career. So she was a small business owner, had an advertising agency in Rochester, New York. And, things got wonky with the economy. And she's like, all right, I'm not like, I got to figure out how I'm going to pay for the rest of my life. And so we're like, hey, sure, let's help you find a financial advisor. But what happened was that she just didn't have enough money to be like the way mostly it works with advisors is they're charging a percent of assets. So, if you don't have the asset level or you don't look like a great future client, there's less interest. So we couldn't really find her help. So anyway, so we were doing it ourselves on spreadsheets, and as we're talking to her, like one of the, I was trying to, as we were doing this, we were like, okay, feels like there's a business here because so many people are worried about this. Like, why are we solving this problem? Like, why isn't there something better here? Um, and so we said, all right, let's build this company. And then we're like, what are we going to call it? And so we're thinking about retirement because we're solving the problem. So my mom's in advertising, and I remember talking to her. She's like, the one word that sells more than anything else is the word new. So I'm like, wait a sec, is new retirement there? And so I bought the URL for like $1,500, and that's how it got started. Anyway, fast forward. So we're kind of helping it evolved to where we're helping a lot of like 401k millionaires, like people who are approaching retirement. But as a business, we wanted to go bigger, right? We didn't want it to be just retirement. And we also felt like the word retirement didn't resonate with like, you know, necessarily like millennials or Gen Z, younger generations. They weren't like necessarily thinking about it that way. And so we felt like we're excluding part of the market. And our ambition was really like, when we think about it, it's really more about helping you with getting control of your money so that you can also have control of your time, right? So, like, if you feel financially confident, you're like, I understand how my money works. I understand like how much I have, how I'm investing, how to control it, what the risks are, and what like my future looks like. Then you can live more with more agency, and that's why we called it. So, like, the idea of Boldin was to you could live boldly, like make your own bold choices in life. So that was the impetus for kind of broadening the brand and renaming the company.
Yeah, let's dig into that rebrand a little bit more because I think since we're talking about it, this is a pretty interesting topic for a lot of our audience. Rebrands are often thought of as being cosmetic, right? It's new logos, colors, taglines. Um, you know, was there something, I think you touched on it a bit, but was there something that really focused the decision to move from New Retirement to Bolden?
We really thought about it. I totally get what you're saying. And we were thinking deeply about kind of our identity as a company and our culture. And we kind of did like this personality assessment for us and for our company. And we're like, what do we like today, and where do we want to be? Where do we want to take this company intentionally? And so we came up with these different characteristics, and, you know, you know, like basically having courage and making difficult choices and like taking risk was part of this. And so that's part of what was behind the name. Um, and it reflects, there's always uncertainty, right? We're as entrepreneurs, we're trying to kind of manage risk today, but also take the risk to kind of achieve what's possible in the future. We felt like this, Bolden reflected that for our own culture here, and where we want to go with the brand as well. And a big part of this is with our community too. Like it was interesting. Like our community loved New Retirement. When we changed the name, a lot of people were like, "This is a terrible name," right? They're
Right.
like, "We love New Retirement. It explains exactly what you do. It's easy to spell." And by the way, people do misspell Bolden, like with E and E and stuff. So that's one bad
Yeah.
thing.
Or a
But
you.
yeah, it's all kinds of stuff. But, you know, I think now as the market grows, we get more people in here. I think more people are understanding it, and I really do think the world is going to change from, we've a lot of folks, especially with AI and everything. Like, we're all worried about like, okay, it's kind of a scarcity mindset. In a happy path in the world, like if AI solves lots of problems, there might be an abundance mindset, and it's like the problem's going to be, what am I going to do with my life, right? How am I going to use my time? I mean, this is what actually happens for what it's worth with people that get financially independent. A lot of folks, they're like, especially FIRE, like financial independence, retirement early people, they're really working hard to be like, I want to be financially independent by the time I'm 45 years old, right? I'll have 2 million bucks, maybe I don't have kids, whatever. I have a low cost of living. They get there, they've been very focused on it. And then they're like, what am I going to do with my life? They're like, work was, work and saving was a big thing. But then like, you're thinking about, okay, we talk a lot about what people like. You need to be thinking about what you're retiring to. So anyway, I think that this might become a bigger thing in society. We'll see. Let's see how it unfolds.
Yeah, I mean, I've run Coast Fire myself, and the answer just comes up like, "Oh, you just need to keep working forever." It's probably more of a spending issue than a top line issue, but we'll think about that some more. Were there any strategic assumptions about your customer or category that had to be challenged before you changed the name?
I would say for our company, there's a lot of strategic, decisions we're making about how we're going about this that I do think comes through the name. Like we are doing something that it's not necessarily obvious to everybody, but like there's many ways that we can make a lot more money. in our business, right? Our users have hundreds of billions of dollars. If we were a AUM advisor and charging 1% and we had like Fisher, 200 billion, which we don't, but like we ground towards that, he's making 2 billion a year, right? It's like you're printing money. It's an incredible business model. But we think that long term, there's going to be more transparency and more choice, and it's better to build a model where we're we're more aligned and more transparent with the end user. I mean, we're not against this model. Like, hey, there's all kinds of business models. They work. We have partners that do this kind of stuff. But like as a consumer business, we're like, all right, let's just make this as simple and easy as possible. So I think these kinds of choices that we're making about how we go about building our business, the business models we use, how we communicate with our community, how we build our community, how we show up like this, like you'll see me on podcasts, like, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's who we are in the garage, cranking away. And I think that builds credibility, but like that vibe we try to bring to the brand. And we're working more on, like, it's not just the name, it's like the brand. We're thinking a lot about the brand and evolution.
And so we talked a lot about your existing community at the time you did the rebrand. What did you intentionally not change in order to continue to engage your community and protect them?
Yeah. So as we, when so we had a woman, Rachel Diesel, who came in as our head of design. As we evolved the company, she came in, and when we were first kind of like, there's been like phases or eras of this company, right? They were like, hey, we're kind of like building it, not making money, like it just kind of barely a business, just like an experiment. And then there was like, all right, we're charge users. Then we're like, all right, we're redoing our brand. We built a whole brand book, design system, all this stuff when it was still new retirement. When we went to Boldin, we said, all right, look, we're going to tune the brand, the colors and theming, but we're not going to wholesale change it at the same time, because we liked a lot of the sense that we had built, the color palettes and all that stuff, the typography and all this kind of things. And so I think that was good. We kind of kept that through line, but we changed the name, and we also kind of reoriented how we talked about ourselves. And this continues. I mean, it's a living thing, right? I would say one thing that's become clear to me as a founder CEO guy is like, well, team quality matters a ton, but culture matters a huge amount. And I'm in companies that are great, generate, like, you meet people at like Schwab or Nationwide, these companies, when you meet the people there, they're all good. They all think that, they're all smart. They all work hard. They have a very similar way about them. And, that's part of the reason those companies can scale and get huge. And we think about that as we try to build our company.
Yeah, I think we even talked a bit about that in San Francisco that day about, the importance of culture and how, culture is really what is how people make decisions when you, the CEO, aren't in the room. And just having that cultural alignment within your team unlocks so much potential, and additional productivity and even just job satisfaction. You just feel better about what you're doing every day. I'm curious, for CEOs that are considering a rebrand, what do you think is the most common mistake that leaders make when they approach it, like tactically instead of strategically?
That's a good question. I think I remember reaching out to another CEO who had gone through a big name change. They were a little bit ahead of us, and just asking, like, what did you learn and why did you do it and what was the impact? I do think, one, really thinking deeply about why you're doing it and what you expect to get out of it. And I think being thoughtful about what there's going to be a downside. Like, whenever you're changing something that big, like, things are going to get worse, I think, before they get better. Right. And we saw that too. Like, there's all this SEO, like, new retirement was a thing. It was like, we had rankings, all over the internet. There's all kinds of links pointing to it. So I would say, be thoughtful about your goals. Talk to people who have done it. Right. Anticipate what might happen and what might go wrong, and be prepared for that. Have that in your forecast. Think about all the underlying mechanical things about, especially if you're a digital business, right? So the communities, the backlinks, how you do SEO, right? Your affiliates, right? I mean, there's a million, like our site, I don't know, has like tens of thousands of pages all over it. You got to change everything. There's all this WordPress, whatever. There's a million things we had to do. So it was a lift. So that's some of the stuff that we thought about. And then, like, did it work? I mean, I do think coming out of the other side, I think ours went pretty smoothly. We did see the SEO reset, but that's come back. The brand is real. If you search for misspellings of Boldin now, you're going to find us. And then we see it resonating in the communities now. They're complaining less, or they're now people just they just think of us as Bolden. So
Yeah, I think that a lot of organizations underestimate the amount of time that it takes to really get traction with a new brand, and it's not something that just happens overnight, right? And typically, when you do it, the very next day, you're like, "Holy blank, what did we do?" Right? So it feels like, everything, all the traffic to your site, everything fell off the table. I won't throw any grenades at anybody, but a lot of times I see rebrands done even at a very, very large level. Like, I could name a national bank that did it. And, it's kind of driven, I think, by the fact that they merged with somebody, but they walked away from a name that had been around for hundreds of years, 50 years, was well known, and they changed it to a name that was meaningless. And I got to imagine they had to put billions of dollars of advertising behind that change, like changing the signage on branches, changing all their materials, changing their website, and it was just like, are we doing this just to placate one side of the organization that we're buying, or is there a real strategic reason to do this? Because I don't think you go into anything like that lightly.
I mean, we thought about there's like Toyota and Lexus, right? We're like, well, maybe we should leave new retirement out there for you know the retirement stuff, and we'll have Bolden there for young. I mean, like literally, we're seriously thinking about this because we had brand equity there or some brand equity, but we said, it's too complicated. I mean, history is going to be the judge if this is a good idea or not, right? We do like the idea of, I mean, also just simpler and shorter and more memorable, easier to type, all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know. When I think forward, it's like I try to like, all right, look, hey, if Bolden is going to be successful, I see us as this, AI enabled, well, this financial co-pilot, right? That is completely aligned with you, that helps you get organized, see what's possible, make good decisions, take action, stay on track. Like it'd be basically like what you would get from a great advisor, either with technology, with software plus AI, or with software plus AI plus a human coach and advisor, and it's all completely aligned with you and totally trusted. And so I'm like trying to think that way, and I want to have a name that reflects that, and people can kind of feel like it's aligned with them. So
Yeah, no, and I think it's working. I'll tell just a really quick branding story before we, get on to other things. But I happened to be the CMO of AIG Bank during the financial crisis. So you can imagine what a mess that was, because we were like ground zero for all of it. And at that time, a lot of AIG business units decided to rebrand away from the name because we were on the evening news every night, blamed for everything that was going wrong in the country, even though it wasn't really our fault, but that's what it was portrayed as. And I had a decision to make: do we rebrand the bank or do we stick with the name? What it really came down to was the fact that, our customer was a sophisticated saver or investor or borrower. They weren't just, the general public, right? We were after a specific niche, people that could make a $250,000 deposit, right? And so my thought process there was, well, everybody in the world, like before then, our problem was nobody knew who AIG was. We were this $1 trillion company and nobody knew who we were. After that, everybody knew who we were, but everybody hated us. And so my thought process was, well, I think that, our investor can see through this and see through the fact that, we are stable, we got the government behind us, we have huge assets. Um, and they may hold their nose, but they would hold their nose and still give us that deposit, and it worked. We rebuilt our business, and 18 months later we were back to profitability. So it really depends on the circumstances, and really strategically thinking through, why are you doing this, what do you expect to get out of it, and how does this align with the customer or the people you're trying to serve.
I mean, totally resonates. You're making me think about what happened with Silicon Valley Bank and then First Republic Bank. So I was a customer of First Republic Bank, right? And things went sideways with Silicon Valley Bank, and which I knew as a venture backed company. We didn't bank with them, but so I was familiar. But I kind of knew the quality of people that worked there because I'd met some of them. And then like First Republic was in trouble, and I remember thinking, well, I trust this. I have a relationship. banking is a real banking, home related, mortgage related relationship. And so when their stock went in the toilet, I had enough trust. I was like, whatever, I'm gonna take a flyer on their stock. I mean, it ended up being a mistake, right? But I didn't risk that much money. But it shows you. I do think that your customers, they'll make their own judgments. Not just based on your name, but like based on the relationship. And even after that, like, Chase bought them, and like, so have a relationship there. And anyway, to what your point is, I do think you have to understand your customer, and how, and if they really know you and they're more sophisticated, and they trust you, I think that they will stick with it.
Yeah, so let's shift gears a little bit and get into some of the marketing tactics that you guys use. Most CEOs say that they want strategy, but they end up investing in tactics. How do you define the difference between strategic and tactical marketing?
Okay, well, look, full disclosure, I'm not a CMO, but so, but
Well,
but I would
I
say,
have an answer because I've told you my answer before,
yeah,
but I'm curious about yours.
yeah. I do think we think so. The brand and the plan and kind of like where we're headed is all part of our strategy. We all want it to hang together and align. I think as and we're on our own journey too. Like the nature of what you're doing is changing, right? As our company gets bigger and we're now cash flow positive. It's like what we can do and want to do. Our ambitions increase. So we are thinking, I think more strategically about like, where are we headed? How is this going to unfold? What do we want this to look like in the future? So we've talked a little bit about that in terms of the name and stuff like that, and kind of where we're headed. Tactically, yeah, there's a bunch of work that we have always been doing, right? We're thinking about, essentially earned, right? We do a bunch of like content creation, and we have our own podcasts. We spun up a YouTube channel. We work with a bunch of partners. We have a bunch of affiliates and influencers that have been it's pretty interesting to see that world work, evolving, especially on YouTube. Like there's a bunch of people that are like normal human beings that became YouTube like serious micro influencers where they're making real money. Like, but they're very like, maybe about, like there's this guy, Joe Kuhn, who's one of our partners, and he's like, he used to run a plant, right? Like a $2 billion making things, in the Midwest, right? And then he like retires. He starts making videos about how to do operations management. Nobody cares. One day he makes a video about like I'm retired and how he's fit, and people are like, "You look way too young." He starts making retirement videos. He has 100,000 subs. He loves our software. He talks about how he uses it in his life, and like that's a real thing. So anyway, there's that stuff. There's paid, right? All the channels in terms of like search and display, well, a little bit less display, but like social, email, right? Running all that stuff. And then there's all the metrics. I mean, obviously there's a huge mechanical part of like running a real D2C performance based business. Like, and for us, we've been ramping that spend. I mean, we spend, it's approaching $500,000 a month right now on direct, and that's going to probably double this year, and you have to do it profitable. Like so many companies like venture back, you're like, I'm going to raise a bunch of money and pour it into paid. You can get just, whatever. You can rip through millions of dollars, and you're like, it's not a great use of like venture capital.
Yeah, I tell people when they say stuff like that, you might as well just park a boatload of cash in the middle of the room and light it on fire because it'll have the same effect. At least you'll be warm, right? Yeah, I've seen that happen, way too many times, particularly in the B2C world. You can blow through a lot of money really quickly if you're not careful and smart about how you do it. I'm curious. So, like, if another CEO came to you today and said, my marketing team is busy, but growth seems stalled, what would be the first question you'd ask them to try to unpack it?
I would ask them, like, do they have do they have a clear vision about hypothesis about how they think growth is going to happen in their business? Like, do they fully understand the mechanics behind the engine that we're building? Like I think of our business like a funnel, right? So there's like the acquisition stuff at the top of the funnel that there's all the different ways we talked about. Then there's the actual conversion mechanics in the middle of the funnel, right? Everything you're doing with your experience to reduce friction, increase conversion and whatnot. And then there's a monetization at the bottom of the funnel. But like there should like it's like a machine we're building, right? And like I'm an engineer, so like I'm like I can break the problem down into pieces. Let's work on these different parts of the machine, make it better and better. But like, do they have a sense for how they're going to go about growth first? And hopefully they do. And then do they understand which levers they think are the biggest ones that can move the needle that are likely to work, and then what are they doing to improve those levers and tests, and how do they think about testing and like proving hypothesis? Is it working? Yes or no? And then the last thing is, and we just observed this, is like, do you run a good process around, like, we just started these biweekly business. So we made our teams all smaller. We assigned them different parts of the funnel. Like, you own this, time to value team, you own this, empowered planning, you own this, come up with your hypothesis, build your sprint plans. We're going to run biweekly business reviews. So we're running our experiments fast, hopefully very fast, getting data. Like, is it working or not? Like, it's okay to fail, but like, let's just we got to run the experiments. And then are we iterating and just like, ever evolving?
Yeah, I mean, that's the fun thing about B2C is, with the scale, you can get feedback on what's working or what's not working really, really quickly. And you can run cycles like that. The B2B world, particularly if you're like enterprise B2B, is a very different animal where you have, year-long sales cycles, and it's much, much more difficult, I think, to get that kind of feedback. Um, how do you prevent your marketing teams from confusing motion with progress?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing with our PDE, product design engineering team. So we had an orientation. Well, I would say our marketing team was better at this than our PDE team, but like, we had a motion of like, hey, we want to ship things, we want to help our users, right? All that stuff. But now we're like, we want to move metrics, right? We're doing work to move metrics. Like, that's what we need to be thinking about. I mean, yeah, we want to do great things for our users, but like, everything is in service of, like, you need a North Star metric, right? So, like, for many companies, ours is, well, there's the ARR for the business, but really it's daily, monthly, weekly active users that are paying us as customers, right? So if we have users and that's growing, and then they're paying us, they're seeing value. So what are we doing to move those things? And I think getting everyone oriented around those metrics, and like, you also have to work together, right? So this is the other thing. It's like, even though we're dividing and conquering, we're also need to collectively see how the work we do moves the entire like, rowing together in terms of like moving the whole boat forward as fast as possible.
Let's go to your customers a little bit and talk about them. Financial decisions are deeply emotional. Even when they're wrapped in spreadsheets or put in a tool. Yeah, how does Boldin account for behavioral biases like loss aversion or status quo bias and how you engage your customers?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a couple things. So one, especially in financial services, one thing you'll observe is that a lot of these companies are around people, like Charles Schwab, JP Morgan, right? Fisher Investments or whatever it is. Like, and I think that's because people can trust other people. So that is a, branding question you want to make, but then you're only, you know, Chuck Schwab is like, whatever, 80 years. I mean, like, eventually, you eventually, people get older, and things happen. But yeah, I think that, for us, we really try to educate people around biases. Like, we've run podcasts on it. I've had experts on there, behavioral science folks. So one, I would say that it is a huge thing. Like, we are our own worst enemy. It like, getting wealthy, like doing well financially is simple, but not easy, right? It's like, hey, it's like, actually, we want to be fit, right? That's simple, but not easy. Like, you got to eat well, sleep, exercise, right? And keep doing that your whole life. Like, okay, easy, no problem, right? Or simple, but like, no one does it. Half this country's overweight, right? Or whatever. So money's the same thing. It's like, outcomes are bad. Like, top 25% of this country, half this country has no money, like negative net worth. The next 25% has like 0 to 650,000 bucks. And the top 25% has 650,000 or more. But really, it's the top 10, 5, 1.1% that really is like, the wealth concentration is crazy. But like, you know, why is that? It's like, if you can learn to, save, so manage your expenses, and then invest into like, low fee index funds, and just do it for 20 years, right? So that's managing your behavior, and not blow yourself up when the market goes sideways by selling it all and freaking out and selling it all, which is what most people do. Um, you'll do fine, but nobody does it because it's hard. So I think being smart about your, understanding these behavioral biases like loss aversion, right? They would they feel so much more pain if they lose money than if the pleasure they get from making it. So a lot of times they get frozen, they don't do stuff, um, they have confirmation bias, they people think short term. So there's so many things. So one is educating them. Two is, I think, helping people understand themselves. Like, many we think of the world as kind of like three things. People into three buckets. They're either kind of DIYs, right? Sorry, or they're validators, right? So I'll do it myself, or I'll have someone kind of look over my shoulder, or do it for me. And like, understanding where you are, if you're a validator or a do it for me, like, get someone to help you. If you can't make the like, it's like, if you need to go have someone yell at you to do push-ups, then go to class, because otherwise you're not doing them, right? So I think there's a lot of stuff tied into this. It's like getting educated, getting the right kind of support, not just today, but like long term, and staying on track is a huge part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have one, but could you share an example of where, understanding that kind of psychology, not through better targeting or messaging per se, but just understanding like how your customers thinking materially improved your outcomes?
I'll give myself as an example. So, as an entrepreneur, a lot of entrepreneurs do this. Like, so I've always been pretty frugal, a good saver, and I kind of like, there's this barbell thinking that happens. You're like, okay, well, I'm taking all this risk as an entrepreneur, right? In the company. Like, there's a lot of my quote unquote net worth, if it works out in the company. And the other side of it's like, I want to be safe and sleep all night. So I'm going to save a bunch of cash and de risk it, which is actually a terrible decision, because you need to invest to keep up with inflation. So, with 50 podcasts in, as I'm talking to experts like, about personal finance, I'm like, all right, I'm understanding what works here. Um, and by getting educated, I find, and it's like that, and also then you have like talked about behavioral stuff. It's like, oh, I'm sitting here, I've got a pile of money, but like the market's doing, I'm like, when should I invest? It's like the math is actually just put it all in, don't even think about it, and just forget it, right? So ultimately, I did that. I'm like, all right, screw it. But I got it all in the market, and now, granted, the market's been on a tear, right? Um, but like, then you start to have these experiences, and this is something that happens in our with our community. When when you first start saving money, it's like watching. I was talking to David, this guy. He wrote the Automatic Millionaire. David Bach. He wrote the Automatic Millionaire. Anyway, it's like watching paint dry, and it's like so boring, and you're like, this is going nowhere, right? And it sucks, especially when you're younger. This is when it's happening. Like, you're like, this is stupid. Let me buy some crypto that doubles overnight, right, or something like that. But as you kind of like keep saving and investing, at a certain point, like, your money makes more money than you can save in that year. Like, you're saving 10, but you've got 150,000 saved, you get 7%, and you just made 10,000 from your investments. You're like, okay. And then as time goes by, you're like, I just made 30,000, I can only save 10,000. That's one phase. And then, like, well, you're, as a coast fire person, you're seeing this. And then over time, it gets to the point it's more than you're making, right? And that's like when you're fully financially dependent, or you're approaching it. You're like, okay, I have $2 million. I made 7% of the market. I made $140,000 from my returns this past year. Like, I make 120, and you're like, "Wow, that's freaking incredible." And then you're hitting escape velocity. If, I mean, obviously the market's going to be volatile and stuff like that. Um, but so anyway, just for my own story, is like, I fully got invested now. Like, I'm capturing the positive, network effect that happens there.
Yeah, of course, it's always important to be, diversified, but, I think one of the fundamental truths about investing is in anything, you get paid for taking risk. You don't get paid for not taking risk. Now, you don't want to take stupid risks, and you want to be, blended, build yourself a safety net. But at the end of the day, like, if you take no risk, it's just like putting money in a mattress. It's going to sit there and basically lose its value over time because of inflation. So, um, how do you help your team design experiences for how people, actually decide versus how they say they decide? Does that make sense?
No, it's great. It's a great question. I think another entrepreneurial lesson is like, people will say one thing and do something else. You really have to look at what they're actually doing, and also, you know, ask some questions in, like, I was just listening to, Lenny's podcast. He had this guy on about growth, and it was like, when people churn, you need to ask them what made you, you know, basically cancel. Like, it's very specific because if you ask it that way, you'll get, like, twice as many answers. So I think, uh, one is continual education from, like, the best minds out there. So it's like what you're doing here. It's great to like. I'm sure you're gonna have incredible guests outside of me. um, I'll be the worst one, but in terms of in terms of like what are people learning? What are some of the best practices? Yeah, so we survey our users, right? We survey our, we build we build our onboarding and our advertising, and do a lot of testing there and ask lots of questions there and like um always trying to understand how people think and where are they psychographically and all that stuff. Um, then we survey users if about why they're upgrading or not, why they're canceling, all these things. We have lots of touch points. The community, classes, office hours, like so many ways, and it's incredible. Like we use NPS scoring, so Net Promoter Score, like. And we're getting a continuous feed, and people give comments on what do they like and dislike. So I think, but mostly it's like watching what they're doing, right? When are they paying? Why are they paying? um, and using that data to like inform the decisions we're making.
Yeah, you're right on. I think that behavioral data is just without peer, right? Particularly when you're looking at trying to optimize an experience, whether it's an acquisition experience or a usage experience, you got to look at what people are actually doing. Surveys are useful to a certain extent, but surveys, people will tell you what they think you want to hear. And when you look at the actual behavioral data that's inside your four walls, that's where you really get the insights on what are they actually experiencing? What are the friction points? What kind of bad decisions are they making? And how can we help them make better ones?
Well, one interesting thing that's happening right now is we rolled out an AI assistant inside of our platform. So we had seen our users like they're building financial plans, they're taking their plans, like downloading PDFs and putting in Chat GPT and asking questions about it. So we're like, all right, let's roll our own. We rolled our own, we trained up our own LLM and with we have a lot of stuff, help, the articles, like data, and we're like, all right, this is how we think in our approach. But then it's amazing watching people one use it. What do they ask? You know, what because it's they're more it's pretty it's like they're trying to solve these problems and it's freeform, right? And what are we telling them? And like how do we make that better? But then they're posting in Reddit like this is what I like and don't like. Now they're sharing prompts. They're prompt engineering our own LLM. Like we have our own stuff internally, but they're writing their own. Like, I want it to do this. I want it to, because it can do things with our platform, like it can drive scenarios, it can drive our engine. It's not just like asking words, but you can use the software. And so that's been fascinating. I just think that it's a whole other lens into how people use this stuff with so much data that's produced as well.
Do you think they trust the answers that your AI tool gives them more than they trust, a financial advisor or a person that they might talk to?
Not yet, for sure. I mean, they're so our users are smart. There's a bunch of like engineers, CPAs, or CFPs using this thing, and they're like, and like all LLMs, like this thing can hallucinate. So, we disclaim all this stuff. So it's interesting watching like they're learning how to use it. Like, okay, it's giving me good directional stuff, or it gives me new ideas to think about, but also sometimes it like makes stuff up, and we're looking at that, and we're releasing nightly to like improve how it works and then you can build other agents around it to like cross check the work. So it is incredible how quickly this whole area is evolving and what you can do with it, what they can do and what you can do with it. But so I don't think so the answer is no for now, but I do think that the idea that, hey, we're going to all have like AI agents riding alongside us is going to happen, right? I mean, I don't know if you've talked to anyone who has like Tesla FSD, but I've talked to two people in the past couple weeks. They're like, a guy on our design team was like, I met him on the peninsula. He's like, yeah, I got in my car, I pressed a button. He has a Cybertruck, which is crazy, and it drove me from San Jose to Burlingame without me touching the wheel and parked. And another guy was like, I just drove to Tahoe, and it's like, this stuff is incredible because it's like frees up so much time. So anyway, it's like happening right around us in all parts of life, not just software, but like in the real world too.
Yeah, it is one of those civilization changing moments, right? Is what's happening right now, and it's really a lot of fun to be in the middle of it. Um, Let's talk about your board for a little bit and how you work with your board. When you talk to your board about marketing or growth metrics, what actually gains you credibility with them?
Yeah, well, what gains credibility, which we are working on, is one, being able to accurately forecast the future or more accurately forecast the future. And we are getting better at this, but it's still an evolving science. Like last year, we went in, we're like, okay, we're shooting for X. And then we're like, the board was like, I don't know if that's real. So then we lowered it, a decent amount. And then so we're like, okay, we think we can do this. And then it was we got into the tariff gate happened. The market dislocated like 20%, which freezes financial services. All my fintech friends were like, my business sucks, and our business sucked too. Um, and you would think, but like, hey, you're freaking out because the market's going crazy. Wouldn't you like to have a financial plan so you kind of anticipate this and think about it more strategically? People don't care. It goes to the emotional side of it. I'm just like, I don't want to think about my money. I don't want to look at it, and that's what was happening. Anyway, we so it forced us to reforecast a bit, but then we were on forecast, and so we kind of achieved, like, we wanted to get to eight-figure ARR business and cash flow break even, and we largely did that. So we're trying to forecast better. I think having longitudinal data, having historical data that you can look at about your actual funnel and your performance, and like, okay, like this year we're trying to, like, hey, can we improve conversion, registration rate from 3% to 4 to 5%, right? So it sounds small. I mean, still you're going up 50%, but like it's not like it's from a low number. And then can we improve our upgrade rate from like 25% to 30%? I mean, those are real moves, but like you're kind of like, and if you can show that you're moving that in the right direction, then and get more people on top of the funnel in different ways, then you can make better predictions. And I think build credibility that way. So you know, we invest a ton in data. We're trying to, it's like we're all driving the car down the road at 90 miles an hour trying to build it. Like, build a data lake house, build a data team, instrument our product better, right? Use the data better, get better insights.
Speaking about data, there are lots and lots of vanity metrics out there, and I'm sure some of them get thrown at you from your teams. What's one of those vanity metrics that you've completely deprioritized as your business matured?
Yeah, I don't think like, the number of registered use. So one is you have to focus on growth versus absolute numbers. I mean, we're all guilty of this. It's like nice to look at your absolute numbers, but like, you know, and we have a lot of free users, but we really don't focus on paid users, right? And what moves the needle there. So, we get a lot of visitors, but like, yeah, it's really about like who's really deeply engaging and getting value. So it's focusing on those things, that like understanding where your customer is getting value and how they're getting value, and then thinking about what drives that, and then working back from there, and being disciplined about what doesn't matter too. I mean, I'm guilty of this. Like, we've done some deals with companies that are big. It sounds like big name. It's gonna crush it. And if it doesn't work, you need to get away from it. Like, don't keep investing if it's not working. So stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are really, kind of unique in a way because you're really a B2C SaaS company, right? You might even be, in some cases, B2C SaaS company, which is a bit different. And so I'm curious, like you talk about free users versus paid users. What's your strategy for converting the free users into paid?
As a principle, like, it's because of the way we came up. I mean, a lot of people have said, well, why even have a free product? Don't have a free product. Just, maybe it's a limited trial, like, and then it goes away, right? Some of our competitors do that kind of stuff. But like, because of how this got started, I was like, I believe that we should help as many people as possible. And as a software company, so we have all this content that's free, podcasts free, even at free classes, and a free version of our software, and it's free forever. And we do have a lot of people that are, and so I think the rationale was like, we're going to build goodwill. Maybe people aren't ready, but they can have a basic plan. And as their situations gets more complicated, they can start paying us, which I think has largely held true. And they also, I think, share word of mouth and stuff like that. Um, so it also lets us go with partners to be like, you can do the same thing. Like, we can go to we're going to with a partner that has tens of millions of users, and we're having more of these conversations. Like, what if we give 20 million people a financial plan, right? You can't do that with human beings, but we can do it with software. Um, that just has value to your users. It's more engaging for you as a partner. Like you're going to engage all these folks, give them something of value. You're going to learn a ton about them too, because they're like framing up their whole financial situation and what they're worried about, and what their goals are, which is super valuable. Um, and then if they sign up to pay us, we can do a performance based deal. You know, um, so we've really leaned into that. And we think, strategically, we feel like that's the right call here, and we think that's also where the world's going. It's like we just talked about with AI, you know, who knows what's possible here, right? We have robot taxis, right, with Waymos, driving a Waymo, and you're like, "Okay, a lot is possible." Watch SpaceX land a rocket upside down. It's like
I love that strategy, and it's not really any different than, what you're doing with consumers. Uh, because you'd imagine the conversation, you go to an HR director, benefits director, CEO of a large company, and you say, look, like, we'll make this available to all of your employees for free. You have to pay us anything. And if they like it, then they'll start to use it and they'll pay us, and then that's great. Or they can, do it through, payroll deduction. Well, however, you can probably figure that out. But yeah, that's just greases the skids of the conversation in a big way, and allows you to expand your base, because those people who start using it, let's say I think you mentioned Raytheon might be a client of yours. The people at Raytheon that start using it, well, they all have friends. They all have relatives. They sit around the Thanksgiving table and talk finances, and they're going to mention it like my friend did to me on a ski lift. And that kind of groundswell just can't help but grow your business and grow your brand.
yeah, I really, by the way, appreciate hearing your story. I shared it with our team because it is like, I feel like, when you're building a company, you're like, is anyone even out there? Do they care about it? But when you hear about it from other people, they're like, heard about it from someone else, you're like, it's like hearing your song on the radio or something. It's like, oh, so people are using this thing, and they like it enough that they're going to tell someone else about it, which is kind of a cool thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, as a founder, what kind of beliefs about growth or leadership did you hold early on, and then now you believe were wrong?
So great question. I think that, I don't know if you like, there's a, I don't want to say trope, but there's a way of thinking about founders where like you need three founders or three CEOs, right? One is a guy who starts it and just takes the risk. One is someone who figures out product market fit. And one is someone who scales it. So I do think that's can be very true. And a lot of times, the founder doesn't make it, right? They get booted. Um, so I think there's a lot of work that the founders need to do to just evolve as people. Like I've started investing in like coaching and just talking to mentors and like really trying to stay super, focused on what moves the needle. And that same thing goes to your leadership team. So I'd say there's yourself, there's your team, right? And there's team. The quality of your team is huge, and then the quality of your culture is huge, and how well people work together. And it doesn't always work out. Like we've had, you know, you have to be very intentional about it. And like I like what Mr. Beast. So two founder guy people I like is, so one is a Mr. Beast thing. He's like, there's A players, B players, and C players, right? A players, are great. You want to recognize them. You also want to reward them and invest in them. I think a lot of people are like, they're an A player, just leave them alone. Actually invest in your A players. The B players are like, you got to coach these people up to be A players. They can be A players. You got to coach them up. C players, for whatever reason, want to, capabilities, will, skill, whatever it is, just not working out. That's okay. You have to get very comfortable with like firing people, right? Or like accepting that it doesn't always work out. And it's actually going to be better for both of you. Like it feels bad, but like it's better for everybody. So that's one, Mr. Beast. The other one is like Reed Hastings' Netflix thing. I'm probably everyone's read this, but it's like we're a sports team, but not like a kid sports team. We're like a pro sports team. We're all pro athletes. We got to be great at our jobs. We got to be great at our craft and work hard at it. And we got to work great as a team. And, you know, same thing. Like you're like killing it and the team's killing it, or it's not working out, and whatever, nothing personal, but like there's no participation trophies here. Like we're working hard. So I think that vibe has to kind of like permeate your business, and people have to realize is what it's about. Like, and we're trying, like, we're here to bring value to our customers and work really hard to make that happen. And, you know, we're lucky to have this opportunity. We should be grateful for it. And especially if we have real customers and people are using it, most companies fail, right? It's like, who gets to $1 million in ARR? Very few. Who gets to 10 million? So a small sliver, right? Who builds profitable companies that are sustainable? So small, but and who builds huge companies? There's like a handful of them, right? It's tiny. So it's like, we got to, and if people trust us, like with us, they're trusting us for their life savings. We should take that seriously. Don't take it for granted and like work hard for it. So anyway, and then keep that going. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, looking ahead over the next, let's say, 3 years, what strategic capability, not a tool, not AI per se, what will you think will matter most to companies that are trying to earn trust?
I do think that transparency and speaking like this, whatever, being in front of your audience, being open about what's working and the good and the bad, and like how you go about solving problems, that you operate with high integrity is key. And we can all know each other better now, right? You can find the CEOs, and you have to be careful with it, right? So, um, but I think, yeah, being upfront about what you're building, why you're doing it, what the culture is like, how you like innovate, but also solve problems is all core. And I think being in lots of different channels, I think community is real. Community is like a huge thing. It's not just like the brand controls the narrative anymore. Like there's like thousands of people on Reddit. There's tens of thousands on Facebook talking about what we're doing and talking to each other. Like that's what sells your product. I feel like, you want to build a big company. Your job is to get people that love your product so much that they're going to tell their friends about it. And like we're starting to see that. That's what makes it work. It's not you shouting from the rooftops that like it's so awesome. It's like other people are like, actually, this thing's valuable, and this company listens to me. you know,
No, I mean, and you said something before, when we were talking about names like Charles Schwab and some of those J.P. Morgan, some of those revered brands in the financial services world, and one of the things that I say to a lot of people I talk to, they're probably sick of hearing me say it, is that people buy from people, not brands. So like you can be out there with your brand, and that's not to say that brand messaging and brand stuff is not important. It is, but when it comes down to like actually making a buying decision, people buy from people. So that level of transparency, you know, you're letting your customer, like right now, even on this podcast, you're letting your customer into a little bit about who you are, who you, Steve, are, but also like the culture of your company, how you operate, what you care about. And that kind of stuff is what really drives buying decisions. It's not flashy brand advertisement or segment on YouTube.
Same thing for companies. It's like I was talking with one of our prospects. He's like, look, the guy who runs the revenue side of this was like, look, I feel like you're somebody I can work with, that I can trust. We trust each other. And I was like, I feel the same way. And it's like, you know, it's never going to be, it's like a relationship, right? Especially with a large company, right? They're betting on you as the founder guy, but also like the whole team that you built, and that you're going to uh, perform as you're building, but like stuff's going to go sideways, and that you're going to show up and fix it or try your best to fix the problems and negotiate it in an upfront way, in a fair way. I think like it has to be like, a fair deal for both people. Like if you're dealing with people that are just like trying to short term optimize, as I said, a founder, and we're talking about this, it's like, it's bad. Like it's just not going to work. Right. And so that's a key part of it.
It only works if you can operate a Ponzi scheme and move on to the next and the next and the next. But if you can't do that, which most people can't, or shouldn't really try to, if you're not creating a win-win, then you might have a short-term gain, but that customer or that business won't stick around for the long term. And it's interesting in the B2B world where you would think it would be more obvious that relationships and people buying from people matter more. Even in the B2B world, I see it over and over and over again where they just don't realize that factor. It's a little bit harder, I think, to do when you're selling B2C, is to give it that like personal touch. But most of my career I spent in like large B2C financial services brands. And what you come to realize is that it's the frontline staff. It's the person answering the phone. It's the receptionist at the front desk. That's where the interface between your customer and your business is. And you better be taking care of those people and putting A players in those seats. Otherwise, you're going to disconnect.
Well, and that's where the culture comes in. It's like, it's so important because as you scale, I mean, think of a company like Schwab that has whatever, tens of thousands of employees, or any good company. It's like, there's so many levels, but like, yeah, the ultimate person you talk to, they're a reflection of their bosses and all the way up. And it's like, they need to do things a certain way and show up a certain way um, to make this happen. I think another quick comment, just back to the B2B thing I was thinking about. It's like, one thing that's changed for us is, first we were enamored with logos and like, I think thinking shorter term. Now, when we talk to customers, it's like, hey, you know, one of our prospects are like, here's where I want to be in 5 years, right? We want to have millions of people on this platform. We want to be doing this with our business model, and it's driving this. Those are the kinds of conversations we want to be having. It's like, okay, if this works, you're making hundreds of millions of dollars a year in value for your business 5 years out, and we're making 10% of that, right? If we're lucky, some slice of that. But you're getting a huge return on your investment, and this is how it's going to work. And there's like a phased approach. Here's how we're managing risk along the way. And like, what you realize with these big companies is, especially if you're a small tech provider, they're making a huge, like I was talking earlier, big financials. They're like, we only make this decision once every 10 years. It's a huge bet. And it's a huge bet for them as their careers too, right? Like, if I choose you as a vendor and this doesn't work, like, it's really bad for me. Maybe
Yeah,
fatal.
yeah. You're asking
So,
that buyer to expend their own political capital internally to make that decision. And so, you've got to build trust with that person. Or, they won't make
they
that decision. They won't take
they
that
also
risk.
watch you. It's for me, it's fun as a fundraiser because you're a CEO, you're fundraising and you're selling and stuff like that. But like, you see these big companies, they actually dig into you. Like, when we were getting like diligenced, I learned all about how people talk to who they. And I was like, oh, these people had conversations about who I am as a person and like my history, and like, they watch how you operate over years,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
And that's where like you do need to, you know, be consistent
Be
and
consistent.
execute.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the themes I think of our whole conversation today, about, building brands, building your personal wealth, building your finances. We even talked, diet and exercise a little bit. And all of those things, one thing that they all have in common is simple, consistent behavior is what wins over time. These aren't complicated things, right? Everybody knows that eating vegetables is better than eating Twinkies. And right. So like, but we have a hard time not eating the Twinkies. And it's that day in, day out, unsexy, boring, simple moves that compound over time. And there's just really no way around that. It's one of those universal laws. So, hey, I'm going to throw a few questions at you. I really appreciate your time today. I want to try to bring our conversation to a close, sadly. So I'm going to just fire some lightning round questions at you really quick. All right. It's top of mind answers. So what is the favorite book that you most often recommend to other founders?
Okay. There's a bunch of them. Well, one of the books that I read early on in my career, which is, I don't know if a lot of people read it now, but it's there's two books. I think it's Gordon Moore, but it's like, there's Crossing the Chasm and Inside the Tornado. But these are like almost timeless books. It just talks about how, especially when you're going to market, and it's kind of like the 0 to 1 problem. It's like, how do you solve kind of for the early market, and then it shifts to like the mainstream market, and then also how do you create essentially network effects, design for network effects in your business, right? Because that's how it takes off. Like, we talk about the word of mouth and stuff like that. So you can actually think strategically. Like, I remember there's like, in our first business, there's something called the bowling pin theory. Like, yeah, it's like the beachhead model. You're going to market, you want to win one or two key clients, totally dominate there and do a great job for them. Understand who their competitors are and if there's related dynamics, and see if you can like knock these bowling pins down. We actually ran that playbook in our first business. We won um, MIT, and we won, sorry, Stanford, U Chicago, and then we were selling to, we were selling SaaS software to universities, and we're like, all right, how do we get in the market? Let's start with business schools, because those kids, this is early days, like have laptops and they're going to use the internet to apply to college, right? Apply to B schools. So we're like, are we on Stanford? And we run Chicago, and we're on MIT, and then we're like, oh, now we have 3 of the top 10 business schools, and we got 8 of the top 10. Then we got 40 of the top 50 in the US. Then we got 8 of the top 10 in Europe. Then we went through those business schools into the universities. I mean, it totally worked. I was like in my 20s. I'm like, this stuff works.
What's one behavior or bias that every CEO underestimates?
I think you got to be really careful about your own confirmation bias and your desire to be right. And you need to surround yourself with people that will challenge you. And they shouldn't, but you still be able to get along. Like you'd have to have mutual respect. Um, I've gotten in trouble where I've been like enamored with like, oh, this person looks like an absolute rock star, but if they're not the right fit, they're not the right fit, right? You need to have people that are smart, independent thinking, can communicate well, and you operate on a plane of mutual respect.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. All right, last question. If you could leave the CEOs, and you're speaking to thousands of them on this podcast right now, but if you could leave CEOs with one principle about growth, like something that cuts through tactics, tools, trends, what would you tell them?
I think it's like you just always have to be learning. It's like I've been listening to like Lenny's podcast. He's a product guy, but he has like these rock stars on that, talk about these mechanics. So it's like, it's things are evolving so quickly. It's like learning from the best thinkers out there who, it's amazing to me how people will go on and just talk about their businesses in a very, like we are right now, open way, and what they're learning. But that, and I think building an incredible growth team that really understands the growth mechanics and what it is, what growth is. And like we're okay at it. Or like it's, compared to like you look at AI companies that are going from 1 to 100 million in ARR, you're like, okay, well, that's not the game. We're like, can we double or triple this business in a year, which is still be incredible. But like, so people are going 10, 20, 100x. I mean, we'll see. I mean, so it's AI stuff. Maybe it's an anomaly, but
All right. Last question. So where can people go to find out more about you or about Boldin and connect with you?
For sure. I mean, anyone can go to boldin.com. So BOLDIN.com. And we have a, personal, you can try our product, personal version, an advisor version, enterprise version. You can find me, Steve Chen, Boldin, Google that. You'll find me, or us, on LinkedIn, where there's a YouTube channel. I run my own podcast. So I try to be accessible, and like, it's interesting. People email me, they can email a CEO, and they're always shocked if I try to reply to everything. And if I see it, I will, if I miss it, I won't, but like if I see it, I'll reply. And I think people underestimate that CEOs, like, they want to get the feedback, and they want to get, candid feedback. Like, I love it. I also like hearing, I hate it, and here's what sucks about it, and here's how you've disappointed me. And so we'll try to fix it, try to make it better.
Great. All right, Steve, thanks so much. It's been a fantastic conversation. We covered a lot of ground. Really appreciate you being on and talking with me a bit today.
Yeah, no, Rich, I appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to seeing this. And, we'd love to share it with our audience as well. And, let's for sure stay in touch, and look forward to seeing you next time you're in San Francisco, or if I'm in Philly or whatever.
We need to go wing foiling.
Yeah,
I really want to get into that. I know you're into it. So yeah, next time I'm in the Bay Area, that will be our business meeting. You'll get me out on the bay with a foil and watch me try not to drown myself.
Well, if you're going to do it, which I fully support, definitely take some. There was like weeks of like pain for me, but then once you get it, it's awesome. Yeah, no, if you go out at Chrissy, it's like we're bringing radios, and there's like, you can get swept out to see the current is for real. So
yeah.
Yeah, but it'll be great.
All right. Thanks, Steve. We'll see you later.
All right. Thanks, Rich. Take care.